Barry Black, welcome to the show.
Hey, Patrick, it's good to see you.
First thing I have to do is thank Steve Gould over at the Things Police See podcast. He interviewed you and he sent me an email and he's like, "Man, you got to interview this guy. He's really good. Man, he's done a lot of cool stuff." And I'm just like, Steve and I bounce ideas and guests off of each other. So it's a really nice community where we're not like really in competition with one another. We're just trying to help each other out. So it's pretty cool.
Right.
So I'm glad he did the intro.
Oh, Steve's a great guy.
Yeah, he really is. So let's start out with you. Where did you grow up, Barry?
I'm from Birmingham, Alabama, way down south.
Okay. So here you are growing up in Birmingham, Alabama. What influenced you into becoming an FBI agent?
Since I was a kid, it was TVs and movies, and I grew up in the 60s, 70s. Birmingham was a different place. It was known as Bombingham back then. I remember as a child seeing the Ku Klux Klan taking up money on the street corners.
Really?
And oh, yeah, it was
Wow.
just that sense of injustice. And then,
Yeah.
you'd go to the movies or watch Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. on TV, and the FBI was the heavy hitters coming in, with the white hats. So it just always appealed to me.
Now, I've never asked an FBI agent this question before, but it just popped into my head. What did you think of the movie The Untouchables with Kevin Costner?
I love all those shows. They're not
Okay.
necessarily true to fact, but they make good theater.
Yeah, well, I love Kevin Costner and Sean Connery is probably one of my favorite actors of all times. The best Bond. Daniel Craig's number two.
Oh, for
But,
sure.
I was just like, this is so good. And, obviously, they took some liberties.
Well, it's TV, it's Hollywood.
Right.
Great show. A lot of the movies now, there's a half dozen FBI shows on, and they're expanding now to CIA and
Yeah.
other agencies, and it's all good. It's garnering a lot of interest for the job too, I think.
Yeah, there's young eyes on it or impressionable eyes on it. And, of course, the stuff that's like way off base, I just cringe when I'm watching and I'm like, oh, no, 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 no. But yeah, I grew up on Hill Street Blues and Starsky and Hutch and, God, Barney Miller. I love Barney Miller. It
Right?
just,
Yeah,
there's
fish.
so many.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, Fish was hilarious. Yamada is always on the phone with his bookie, just all kinds of crazy stuff. Just it
good
was fun.
stuff.
It really was. Yeah, I just don't see that anymore. I think the old shows, especially like what we were talking about, really captured like the humanity part. The cops are they're people, man. They with all their frailties and quirks and whatever else. Yeah, it just now it's like I was just watching a clip from SWAT, and it's so stupid. Oh my God, is this dumb? I mean, you were a SWAT operator, and I'm just like, these guys are supposed to be full-time SWAT operators, and big cities do have those. And they're running around in super tight t-shirts and in the 411 pants or whatever those BDU pants are, and they're going out solving crimes and shit. And I'm like, no, they don't. They do SWAT stuff. They're not out like being detectives and whatever.
You
It's
know,
just
what's
silliness.
funny, Patrick, is in the bureau, except in some very unique circumstances, our SWAT teams are collateral duties. So you've got
Right.
caseloads. In the 80s, when I got on, you would do your regular caseload, and the SWAT thing was absolutely extra. So, we didn't have the t-shirts and 511s yet, but
Yeah, these
yeah,
guys.
there's a little something to that.
Yeah, everybody, obviously it's Hollywood, but everybody looks like they jumped off the cover of a fitness magazine. And I'm like,
Right.
yeah, that is not true to life, but
For
so
sure.
be it, so be it. But, so those were your influences there. Now, was there anybody in your family or friends in law enforcement?
Not my immediate family, but
Hmm.
when I was young, I played ball, and my little league baseball coach was an FBI agent. He
Ah,
volunteered to coach our team in a little town called Edgewood, which was sort of where I'm from. Homewood's the sort of city center, if you will. And he was a great influence, a great guy. His son was my age, so we went up through the Joy League ranks, as they called it, and yeah, he knew I was sort of enamored with the Bureau, and he was very patient, answered all my questions. even up through high school. And yeah, he was a good role model.
That's awesome. Now, does he know that you became an FBI agent?
He does, and we've spoken a time or two since. Yeah,
Ah,
we're
that's
all getting a
awesome.
little older now, but yeah, I'm going back to Birmingham for another little book signing, and I'm going to try to look him up then.
You know, it is amazing how at the time you don't know it, you just don't even consider it, but the impact that you have on other people sometimes is just shocking.
Well, and you never know, right?
No, you
And
don't.
he was just wanting to spend time with his son. Oddly enough, I went on to coach all my son's,
Oh,
little
cool.
teams when he was coming up, because we're gone a lot. My job took me away a lot, so I wanted to be present for him when I was home. So looking back, it is kind of ironic that my coach got me interested, and then I went on to coach my son's teams.
What do your parents do for a living?
My dad was in insurance, and my mom worked for some anesthesiologists.
Oh, wow. Okay. So not even close to being law enforcement.
Not even close. When I told them that's what I wanted to do, they were very encouraging. I said, "Well, that's great, but the FBI is kind of hard to get into, so make sure you have sort of a backup plan," which is great advice.
Sure. Yeah, it really is. It really is. You never know. So, your childhood, teen years, who were you? Were you a jock? Were you a nerd? I mean, how would you describe yourself growing up?
I bagged groceries at the Piggly Wiggly,
So did
and
I. I want to be the night manager at Piggly Wiggly when I was in
how about
college.
that? You gotta love the pig.
Oh yeah, the
Uh,
wobbly hog.
That's right. That's right. I pumped gas at my uncle's gas station. Played in some bands. I've been playing the drums for about 50 years now, and
Oh wow,
uh,
okay.
yeah, I did just a little bit of everything, and tried to make the most of my time.
Oh, that is so cool. So, where did you wind up going to college? Did you go like right
Uh,
after high school then?
yep, I went straight in. I was very fortunate to be able to go straight to college. I was in engineering my first year at University of Alabama in Birmingham.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when my coach, my old coach, put me in touch with the FBI recruiter.
Mm.
And I was pretty excited. So I met with the recruiter and she said, "Well, what are you studying?" I said, "Well, I'm in engineering." And there's this long pause. And she goes, "Well, we're not hiring engineers." No. So I said, "Well, who are you hiring?" She said, "Accountants and lawyers." So I changed majors and actually moved down to Tuscaloosa, which was the better accounting school at University of Alabama, and got in the accounting program just with the express purpose of trying to get in the bureau.
Oh wow. You know, it's so funny you say that. Man, we have a lot in common. I remember I was getting ready to graduate from college. I went to University of Wisconsin Whitewater, which is, a small state college, and they had a job fair and all these different employers have their tents up and I saw, ooh, FBI. I'm a criminal justice minor, a sociology major. I'm like, yeah. So I go up there and I'm like, I'm all proud and happy. And I'm like, yeah. So, I am interested. I graduate next semester or whatever it was. And they're like, what's your major? And I said, sociology, minor in criminal justice. They're like, no, thank you. I said, what do you mean? She said, we're looking for lawyers and accountants.
Right.
We're not looking for you. And I'm like, just pop that balloon. Boop. It was like,
But at least you tried, right? You,
I
you
did.
asked.
I did.
Yeah, I went ahead and made the leap. I never wanted to be an accountant, but that was the quickest way in. They had in the 80s, accountants were in very short order. They were in high
Mm.
demand.
Okay.
So the recruiter said, if you get an accounting degree and then can pass the FBI's accounting exam, they would waive the next requirement, which was 3 years of practical work experience.
Oh,
So
wow. Okay.
by getting the degree and passing that test, I got in when I was 24.
That's young because what? Most FBI agents are close to 30 when they get on.
Yeah, around 30, 32.
Yeah. Because a lot of them come from either other federal, like ATF, DA or whatever, or other municipalities, like different police departments. Or do they count military experience too, or not?
Right. Sure. You get a military preference, right?
Yeah.
They just want somebody with a demonstrated ability to show up on time and actually do some kind of job. So that's why they had that 3 years of work experience. But
Mm.
as I said, the accounting specialty was in such high demand. They figured if you could pass, they don't even do it anymore. It's called the accounting specialty. They had an exam based on the AICPA exam, And if you got the degree and could pass the test, then they would waive that extra 3 years of work. So it was a short track for me, and it
Yeah.
got me where I wanted. So it worked out well.
Now, when you were going through training at the academy, were you the youngest person there?
Yes. Yeah, I showed up at Quantico on a Sunday afternoon, all bright and shiny, 24 years old, and the lady said, "Your first meeting's at 7:30 tonight." So I went in this little conference room, and I remember there were Green Berets and Army Rangers and Marine Corps officers and
Oh.
trial litigators and grown-up CPAs with all this experience, and me. Uh, but I was there, and I was gonna stick with it, so it worked out.
Oh, that's good. Were you treated any differently, do you think, because you were a
No.
youngster?
No, everybody that I'm not sure how I got in, but the caliber of people the Bureau attracts is really pretty high. Everybody's tend to be kind of high achievers and team players. It was a real cohesive group, and I'm still good friends with some of my classmates now after all these years.
That's awesome. They're probably just like, hey, where are your parents? How did you get in here?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Who is this
24
guy?
is pretty young. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, that's awesome. So you got in with your accountant degree. So you're a new FBI agent. Where were you stationed first?
Because I was an accountant, I was sent to Oklahoma in the 80s. There was an oil bust. There were a lot of really poor banking practices that resulted in a bunch of bank failures. The bank
Oh,
failures then led to a lot of bankruptcy fraud. So there was a lot of white collar crime in Oklahoma and Texas. So myself and my classmates that were also accountants, we almost universally got sent to Oklahoma and Texas in what we call oil country.
okay. Now, what type of cases, or is there any specific case that kind of pops out in your mind when you were newer or a newish agent that you were tasked with?
I was assigned initially to a white collar financial crime squad, which makes sense with the background.
Sure.
And we worked the whole array of white collar crimes. As I said, bankruptcy fraud. I ended up with a stock manipulation case. I actually had one white collar case that was on Unsolved Mysteries
Oh,
um,
okay.
back in the Robert Stack, the
Yeah, I
original show
remember that.
days.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. A couple of guys came into town. They were very clever. They had operated this same scam down in southern Alabama before. Basically, you show up to a town, and this you got to remember is before anybody had cell phones or digital imagery. They actually put ads in the newspaper soliciting a local manager for this new business, and they particularly preyed on college age kids,
Oh,
offered them a
okay.
ton of money,
Yeah.
and then left them instructions of how to set up the business. And then the two principals left town. So this one college kid was really the face of this multi-million-dollar entity, and it fell apart, quickly. They just generate a ton of money and then pay their employees quite well, which is how they perpetuated the scheme. But we had no idea who they were because nobody had seen them except for this one kid,
Mm.
and obviously they had used aliases. So long story short, we executed some search warrants, found one document with one fingerprint on it, and it came back to a known con man. That kind of unraveled the first level or layer of the onion, and we were stuck. So we went to Unsolved Mysteries, got a ton of tips, and within a matter of months had both men arrested. One of them, his true name was Frederick Krueger, so I've arrested Freddie
Freddy
Krueger.
Krueger.
But yeah, so they both got convicted, went to prison. One guy subsequently escaped from prison.
Wow.
And so there was a fugitive hunt with the marshals, a little shootout, and they found him. So the white collar thing can be exciting.
Yeah, for those who are not in the know, whenever I would have somebody, come to me or one of my coppers, and it's like, yeah, my identity was stolen, fraud this and that, and I would just cringe because I mean, how long does a typical case like that take to solve? I mean, it takes forever.
Yeah, I had some that lasted 4 and 5 years.
Oh,
Uh,
God.
well, and that's
Oh,
that's for an accountant, that's putting the puzzle pieces together. I enjoyed it. It was challenging, and these are not, bounce check cases at the Piggly Wiggly. These are multi-million dollar offshore insurance companies.
Right.
I traveled a good bit. We use what we call mutual legal assistance treaties with other nations because we can't just subpoena bank records in Panama, for instance. We have to
Right.
work with the Panamanian authorities. So I would travel to these little Caribbean islands where the companies were
Oh,
set
that's
up,
tough.
and
Oh no.
yeah, somebody has to do it, right?
Hey,
Yeah,
honey,
one
I'm
in
going to, Turks and Caicos again. Bye.
it's so funny. Yeah, the one company was set up in the Turks and Caicos. Their banks were in Bermuda.
Oh,
So I just made the circuit. Yeah, it was tough.
yeah, that's tough work there. I don't know how you did it, but but like I said, it takes a special person to do it because, you have to have so much patience, and I've got zero patience when it comes for that. Thank God I was a boss, and tell a cop, yeah, go do that, and then we had, the white collar crime unit in our detective bureau, and yeah, they just think differently. It's a different beast altogether. It's a literal mountain of paperwork that you have to sift through, and you have to dot all your I's and cross all your T's.
One of my largest cases, the bankruptcy records came to me in a semi truck. There were
Oh,
eight
man.
800 bankers boxes of documents.
How do you, I mean, I guess, it's like how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? I mean,
One,
just,
one, one bite at a time. You open one box, and we did eventually get computers, which helped sorting all of that a
oh,
little bit better. But when I first started, uh, we had a bullpen set up. There were, I think, 15, 16 agents in one room with desks pushed together, and every other agent shared a hardline telephone, and we had to share cars. It was a different bureau back in the late 80s.
wow. Yeah, that is just amazing to me. Wow. Well, God bless you. I mean, somebody's got to do it. I know another FBI agent that I've had on the show a couple of times was Jerry Williams, and I know she was on your show too. She did a lot of white collar stuff.
She's great. Yeah, Jerry's a great person, great agent, and she's doing a wonderful job now.
Yeah, she's going places. I'm very excited for her because I love to see somebody's career blossom after their law enforcement career. It's
Right.
so fun to watch, and she's such a nice person. Oh my
She is
God.
just a genuinely good person. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just it fills my heart. That it's like okay, the world is we do have mostly good people in it. So
Right. Oh yeah. I think that's true.
yeah, absolutely. So you're chugging along doing your accountant thing. Then you kind of got an itch to do something a little bit different from being an accountant cop. You you want to go to the SWAT team. Explain that to us.
Right. Well, the SWAT team was collateral, so you could do two things at once. There were a couple of openings on the team. Back then, we were on probation for a year. So you just kept your head down, tried to stay out of trouble
Oh
for
yeah.
that year. It's moved up to 2 years now. But as soon as my 1 year probation was over, I was fortunate. My training agent, or FTO for the cops out there,
Yeah.
he was on the SWAT team, and he was actually the sniper team leader. And we had become friends over my 1 year probation. And yeah, he said, "Hey, why don't you try out for the SWAT team?" And it offered a little more excitement than those 4 and 5 year bank cases.
Yeah.
I was intrigued, and it really was a little challenge. I wanted to see if I could make the team, and I was pleased to get on. And we did a little more exciting things. We arrested some high risk fugitives and high risk warrants, and I did enjoy it, but then had the opportunity to go to sniper school. As I said, my training agent was one of the sniper team leaders,
Okay.
uh, recognized marksman nationally outside the bureau. He's just a great guy. Um, so we would go shoot every Wednesday. And after a while, he said, "Well, you ever thought about, going to sniper school?" Which I had, as you mentioned earlier in the show, that show SWAT. The
Yep.
coolest guys on the team were the snipers. So
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
thought, you know what? Yeah, I wanted to see if I could do it, and I got selected. Went to sniper school. It was a January. It was very cold and
Oh,
snowy and rainy, but yeah, it was a challenge, and I enjoyed it. And then really my first major deployment uh, was the Branch Davidian standoff in Waco back in '93.
Yeah, just backing up a little bit with the sniper stuff, I think that's one thing that is misunderstood by the general public. You know, I think, probably the most high profile thing was when President Trump got his ear shot. You had the
Right.
snipers that were on that one roof and they took out the guy that, tried to kill the president and killed that off-duty firefighter. And did you have much experience with firearms and shooting and all that before you joined?
Well, coming from Alabama, I grew up hunting. Guns
Okay.
were, I was not unfamiliar with them, but again, the FBI, the quality of training afforded to its personnel is really fantastic. So we shot a lot at Quantico. Regular firearms is every quarter, and the SWAT team shot more, and then the sniper team shot more. So you get a lot of opportunities to expend some ammo. And of course, the shooting part, particularly for a sniper, is sort of the last resort. A lot of it's getting into position and intelligence gathering, kind of eyes and ears for the command element.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to think, what kind of weaponry did you have back then?
We used in the field, we used a 308, sort of a custom-made 308 bolt action Winchester.
Okay. And what was your sidearm and did you use MP5s, like with the regular?
So, uh, I went through the academy when we had revolvers. So this
Yeah, there
is,
you go.
Matt Dillon style. We used a Smith& Wesson Model 13, 357. The special teams then had 6 hour 9 millimeters. And then after the Miami shooting, the Bureau did a lot of studies and we transitioned through a number of weapons, but ended up with a special milled Smith& Wesson 10 millimeter pistol.
That's right. FBI
And
was 10 millimeter. That's right. Yeah.
yeah, and we had then transitioned. When I started, we used M16s. Then we went to the MP5 for a little bit of a slower round. But when we moved to the 10 millimeter pistol, we ended up with a 10 millimeter MP5,
Oh,
which
okay.
both were great weapons. But they're pistol rounds, basically
Right.
either the 9 or the 10. And now we're back full circle to M4s. We still have MP5s for close quarter stuff, and then back to a 9 millimeter sidearm.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, because, like with my agency, I got on in 95. I was 30 when I got on the job. And they just transitioned from the Ruger 357s. They had wheel guns. And
Right.
all the new recruits got Glocks. We had 40
Yeah.
caliber Glocks. So, you give all the new stuff to the recruits. We had all the
Sure.
new shiny cool stuff, so we got that and we transitioned from there. We got the Smith& Wesson we got the Smith& Wesson 40 cal, the M&P, and then we went to the the SIG P320 that goes off by itself. So we actually had an accidental discharge. So they're like, yeah, it's time to get rid of this gun. So now they went full circle and they're back to Glocks, but 9 millimeters,
Yeah.
not the
Sure.
40 cals.
They're universal, really. Most agencies are going with Glock. It's a nice handgun.
Yeah, it is. It is. But it's just interesting to see the evolution of firearms through all the years. It just and whenever that gun came around, it's like, oh, this is the best thing since sliced cheese, and they're really selling the heck out of it. And you're like,
Yeah.
and I remember my old range master when I was in the academy, he says, I don't give a shit what you shoot. Obviously we had to shoot what they gave us, but he says, it's all you. It's the operator. It ain't the gun.
Right.
Just so you
Yeah.
know, there's no special gun out there that's gonna make you, a crack shot or whatever. He's like, I'm just as happy with a six shooter. He's like, he was this old SWAT guy, and he was great. He was fantastic, just the best range master ever. And no truer words were said.
I liked I liked the 10 millimeter. It was huge. It was just a heavy weapon.
Yeah.
But I've got a pretty big hand. The recoil was minimal. It's a good round, but not everybody could shoot it unless you had a pretty big paw. It was kind of hard to hang on to,
Oh, okay.
and it was all metal. It was really pretty heavy too. So when they transitioned to the composite Glock, it almost seemed like a toy. But yeah,
Yep.
that stainless 10 millimeter was probably my favorite pistol.
Oh, geez. So, you go to SWAT and you become a sniper. Now, what were some of the myths that you see out there, like in TV and movies with snipers compared to what being a real sniper is?
Again, you hope you never have to take that shot. That's sort
Right.
of a last resort. It's a capability that you should possess because the rest of your team and the public's counting on you. But so much of it is being able to achieve a vantage point without being seen, close enough to see, and in some cases hear what the to gather the types of intelligence that command needs. So it's an intel gathering position with that long range lethality as a last resort.
Yeah, and what people don't understand is snipers and SWAT teams save a lot more lives than take lives. A lot
And
more.
that's the goal.
Yes.
That's sure that's the goal.
And I assume you worked in a team. You always had like a partner that was a spotter.
Right. Yeah, I was very fortunate that nationally ranked uh, marksman that was my team leader had been my training agent, so we knew each other quite well, and we were paired together the whole time I was on the team.
Oh, that's awesome. That's very cool. And like you said before, I mean, you have to get to a position that's tactically, good, and that often involves a lot of physicality. Getting into weird spots and you have to do it slowly and, covertly and yeah, there's an art to that.
Well, and urban areas are different than remote rural
Right.
regions. Oklahoma is there's a lot of wide open country out here. Uh, we had one case, a couple of fugitives, some pretty rough guys. They were holed up in one of a series of farmhouses. And the one our informant said he was going to be in that night, they had staked out a bunch of pit bulls outside. So
Oh,
you had to be careful how close you got.
yeah.
But it was almost Christmas time, and we had night vision then. It was very rudimentary. So basically, we were just using land navigation to find the right little farmhouse. Found a place under a barbed wire fence that was, yeah, it gave us pretty good access to the front of the house, and a state police team. The highway patrol team was at the rear, but we were close enough where we could hear them talk.
Wow.
And we had one of our aircraft above us called Night Stalker, and we were looking for this one particular guy to leave. And we were able to see he was silhouetted by Christmas lights on the porch. I remember this vividly, but it was the speech pattern of his kid. His 10-year-old boy had a speech impediment that our intel had told us about.
Oh,
So I could hear him talking on the porch, and he said, Dad, don't forget milk. So I was able to tell Night Stalker that's the guy, and another team took him down when he got outside the gates of the farm.
wow, that's amazing. And one thing you see a lot in like movies and TV is like, okay, you've got the green light. You've got the green light. It's like, no.
No, and again, that's not the norm.
Right.
Again, most of it is intel, and that's the key thing because you want to get people out of harm's way and arrest the bad guy. That's the goal.
Yes, absolutely. So, you're on the SWAT team, you're a sniper. Did you ever consider going to the hurt team?
No, HRT was not that well known back
Oh,
then,
okay.
at least not to me. It's a fantastic group of folks, top tier operators, usually from some of the other special teams, either Special Forces or Navy SEALs. Great group of people, highly trained. But as an accountant, I was happy to be on
Okay.
the field SWAT team, and HRT. They're at Quantico, and I moved out here, was settled in pretty good in Oklahoma. It was just a good fit for me, but I never really considered HRT.
Okay. Gotcha. And for those who don't know, that's like the full-time, SWAT team for the FBI.
Yes, they're exceptionally good at what they do, very highly trained. They work with the other top tier military groups domestically and abroad,
Yes.
and are exceptionally good at what they do.
Yeah, I had Diamico on my show, and he was talking about Somali pirates, and they were embedded with SEAL Team 6,
Right,
and it's just super high speed stuff.
for sure.
Yeah, that was very impressive to say the least. So, you alluded to Waco. That was February 28th to April 19th, 1993. Yeah, what stage of that standoff did you come in?
My wife and I just got married, and we were unpacking from our honeymoon.
Oh
Uh,
man.
and yeah, our one of her bridesmaids called. We had hardline phones then, no cell phones.
Right.
And so I answered. She said, "Hey, are y'all okay?" So, well, yeah, why? She said, "Well, we saw on TV 4 agents were killed." Well, we'd been overseas. I hadn't seen the news, so we turned on CNN, which was the only channel at the
Right.
time, and they were showing that failed raid by another agency. And as we watched, I did have a pager. Since I was on the SWAT team, I got a pager. Just it went off, and it was our little rally code. And my wife said, what's going to happen? How does this work exactly?" I said, "I'm going to pack for 3 days. It'll probably be over before we
Oh,
cross the Red River down into Texas, but I'm going to go ahead and I'll pack for 3 days and I'll call you when I get down there." Well, of course, it turned into 51.
oh
Um,
God. So you were
yeah,
there pretty much towards the beginning.
right. Yeah. So once there was a ceasefire, there was a horrific firefight between the Davidians and this other agency, and there was sort of a ceasefire called to collect wounded and dead. And President Clinton was new, Attorney General Reno was new, and it was decided that the bureau would go down. Um, which is how the FBI got involved in Ruby Ridge. The U.S. Marshals
Right.
were there looking for a fugitive, and so yeah, we were sent there. Geographically, our team was part of the mutual aid, mutual support for
Mm.
our office in Waco. So we were one of the first teams to go down.
Now, you went there as a sniper. And did you volunteer or was it just expected? Hey, my beeper's going off. I gotta go.
Well, yeah, when, as you know, Patrick, when you get that page, if you're on the team, you're going. That's
Right.
part of the responsibility.
Sure.
So no, it was just the job. That's
Sure.
where you get on those special teams to do those kinds of things. So, um, of course, I had no way to know this was going to be an unprecedented, historic event, which
Yes.
it was really unbelievable.
Wow. I just think about it. And first off, from a tactical point of view, you're at a horrible disadvantage. I mean, I remember looking like at the compound and I'm thinking it's like, man, the only way I could see like getting there would be either with armored vehicles that would be moving, like cover and concealment or from the air. But, all those aren't like great, options. You're wide out in the open. There is no cover or concealment around there.
Yeah, it was flat, Plains of Texas,
Oh,
enormous compound with a tower in the middle. And we were briefed by the other agency's special response team as to the ferocity and volume of fire they had encountered. We expected to encounter 50 caliber rifles and potentially explosives. So now most agencies have access to a Bearcat or
yeah.
some type of armored vehicle. Law enforcement just didn't have those
No, we
in the
didn't.
early 90s.
You know what
So
we
we
used in
were
the city?
right. Yeah.
No, you know what
Uh,
we used in the city when we didn't have Bearcats?
was that
Garbage trucks.
super garbage trucks? Yep.
Yep.
Bulldozers, if in a pinch,
Yeah,
would work.
absolutely.
Yeah, but to make it was you're right. It was a long approach down a
Oh,
desolate dirt road, and we borrowed Bradley fighting vehicles from Fort Hood just for the armor. There was no ammo for the onboard weapons, and initially we walked on the safe side of those Bradleys
oh yeah.
down the intersection of the next little dirt road and held our position there, and that's sort of when the stalemate started.
Yeah, I had Gary Nessner on my show. I interviewed him, and he was one of the lead negotiators.
Right.
And I remember talking to him, how do you reason with a David Koresh, this cult leader that is a complete wackadoodle, and his followers are even more wackadoodle? What rational person thinks it's okay? It's like, okay, I'm gonna get married, but David Koresh is gonna have my bride on her wedding night. Who thinks that's okay?
Well, it's, a beautiful thing about our country is you're free to believe what you want, but you
Oh,
can't shoot at people.
yep.
Yeah, the whole situation from where we got involved was just quite strange.
Yeah, trying to reason with a fanatical person like that, that is obviously not even close to being rational, is you're at such a disadvantage to begin with that. I remember watching the net, I think it was on Amazon Prime or Netflix, whatever it was, they did the story of it, and I believe it, and I read Gary's book, and I believe it was a UPS guy that kind of tipped off the authorities because they were like making hand grenades and all this, it's like, man, there's something weird going on here, guys. So they
Yeah, if I
notified
remember,
it.
the UPS or FedEx that dropped a package and some unusual items rolled out. So yeah, that
Yes.
I think was sort of the final straw for the other agency.
Yeah. So here's this long, drawn out standoff after the initial, there was a raid by ATF, and that pretty much ended in disaster. I think four agents got killed, and I think six of the cult members got killed. So that just didn't work so great. So you're there and you're a sniper. What was your job and how many hours would you be in position, doing your thing?
When we got down there, it was usually about a 12-hour shift with an hour brief on each end. So it was basically a 14-hour day, but the operation was 24 hours a day. So
Right.
other teams were there. So yeah, you would rotate through. And then as the tactical situation changed, the negotiations would ebb and flow. The perimeter began to shrink a little bit. So we moved positions a couple of times. HRT, we mentioned before, was this had never happened before. So HRT was much smaller then.
Mm,
I believe they doubled in size as a function of this event.
okay.
But by the time HRT was deployed, obviously, you can't stay on the scope that long as a sniper. So the field snipers, such as myself, were assigned to spell the HRT snipers. So as things wore on, I would get in a Bradley, and then they would take me back to one of the sniper positions, and I was paired up with an HRT sniper. Great guy, West Point grad. Oddly enough, he's the agent that took that errant shot at Ruby Ridge.
Okay.
So while he was not on the scope, while I was on the rifle, he would be on a satellite phone talking to see if he was going to get prosecuted for that.
Oh God.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure down there.
Wow. I mean, but the toll it took on your body because, you're talking about 12 hours maybe in the prone position, just with very little movement, I imagine.
Well, this was not a common deployment. So
Okay.
initially there were basically readouts or sandbagged positions,
Okay.
where we could stand. And then my position behind the compound, once we were back with HRT, uh, again, this went on for a very long time. So we had it was a cinder block building, it was a garage basically that we had reinforced with steel and sandbags and
Mm.
had a plywood bench as a bench rest. So it was not the normal lie in the woods kind of thing for 51 days.
Oh, okay. I can, man, that would be something. So, obviously negotiations, you said there's ebbs and flows to it. And, just in talking to Gary as well, it's like, oh, this just is not going great. Nobody expects that to go that long. Usually
Right.
when I would have to, I've called for our SWAT team a handful of times, and usually the situation handles itself before anybody gets there. It's very unusual that, our SWAT guys usually are for high risk warrants,
Right.
warrant service, that kind of thing. Hostage situations, yes, they do happen, or something along those lines, or a barricaded subject. But usually the street cops take care of it before anything else happens. Somebody's going to do something, and it's somebody forces a hand, and it's over with.
Sure.
So, you know, I was doing my due diligence before, I talked to you. And what comes to your mind when you hear this? I looked this up on Wikipedia. After 51 days on April 1993, the FBI launched a tear gas attack in an attempt to force the Branch Davidians out of the compound's buildings. Shortly thereafter, the Mount Carmel Center became engulfed in flames. The fire and the reaction to the final attack within the group resulted in the deaths of 76 Branch Davidians, including 20 to 28 children and David Koresh. What do you think of when you hear something like that?
Well, it's Wikipedia,
Yeah,
and now with AI, you get these kind of generated responses. Yes, we introduced tear gas. It was approved by Washington, the AG, and up. What they left out was the fires were started simultaneously from the inside by the Davidians. There was a huge investigation after the event. Um, Reports were written at a congressional level, and we had overhead thermal imagery and some recording devices inside the compound. uh, Subsequent interviews with Davidians that did survive said that accelerants had been spread throughout this rickety wooden compound. So it's not inaccurate. We did launch tear gas, effectively tear gas, and there was a fire, but they seem to be omitting that critical point
yeah,
of who started the
yeah. They're
fire.
definitely making it look like law enforcement was the bad guys and not the wackadoodle inside this compound who refused to give up. That's making hand grenades and had 50 caliber, rifles. Yeah, it's amazing how, oh well, yeah, I'll get off of that, but it makes me angry when I see stuff like that because that's not how it happened.
Well, eventually, the truth comes out. It's usually buried on the back page of the
Yes, it is.
newspaper. It's not quite as sexy as,
Right.
the conspiracy theories. And a lot of these larger investigations I've been a part of, whether it was Waco or the Oklahoma City bombing or even 9/11, the conspiracy theories are much more interesting to some people
Yeah,
than the truth.
that's very true. Now, how much of the decision making was boots on the ground compared to Washington, D.C. calling the shots?
As this evolved, and again, it seems strange to say now, but this type of thing had never occurred before. So, with a new administration in an absolutely unique situation, uh, Washington was involved a lot. You'll remember, the incident command system really started with firefighters, and it
Yeah,
wasn't adopted by law enforcement really until after 9/11, but it functioned in its own way, even at this event. We had a tactical operations command. We had what would be called today incident commanders, highly qualified, well-respected folks. The negotiators and the tactical team leaders would help in the decision-making process. And obviously, negotiations and the tactical thing have two different ways of trying to get to the same resolution. But a lot of decisions would have to go back to Washington before any kind of dynamic action was taken.
see, I would find that to be incredibly frustrating because, things happen very quickly, as you well know, and indecision is just deadly. That's what causes a lot of problems.
Well, being there, I remember, the Davidians were told not to come out because we were under the impression, and I think we're correctly so, there were a lot of weapons in there.
Right.
And there were times, we would take the power down or whatever. And I remember one instance, somebody came out without advising through the negotiators. And of course, we saw them. That's what we were there for, was eyes and ears. And one tactic was to deploy a flashbang to encourage them to go back inside. But I remember we had to call this in, are we going to flashbang? And by the
Really?
time we got it back, they had gone inside. So
Ugh.
yeah, it turned out we did. Uh,
You would have to
yeah,
ask
so
permission to deploy a flashbang?
at that particular time, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That blows my mind. That really does. I mean, that's you got to trust the people that are there, to oh wow, that just, I've done a ton of IC stuff, a ton of incident command, I was the incident commander for 7 officer involved shootings where somebody was killed and, all different stuff. And I was lucky enough where my bosses trusted me to make the right decisions. And because most of these situations were fluid, you don't have time to be like, well, what do you think about that?
Right.
It's like that's it just mires things down.
Well, and this was such a strange situation.
Yeah.
there was a team of negotiators, and nobody wanted to do something that was going to interfere with the possibility of a peaceful surrender.
Right.
So, I mean, a 40 millimeter flashbang gets your attention,
Yeah.
and so everybody wanted to make sure, well, is this going to cause something to go sideways? So there was just a lot of moving pieces. I can understand the theory behind it. Um, we've learned a lot through. I mean, this was
Sure.
1993 in a never before seen situation. So yeah, we learned a lot. But as far as how things went, I think they went about as well as they could given the situation.
Okay. Now, was there a clear chain of command and incident command there? Like there's one agent or whoever that was in charge and they had their underlings and then they would spread information to you guys. And because it
Yes.
wasn't just you, the ATF was there and I'm sure other agencies as well.
Well, so once the FBI arrived, we took operational command.